The blood on Olivia Kane's hands came from a man who would have died without her intervention. But that did not matter to Sheriff Dalton, who stood in the doorway of the cramped boarding house room with his hand resting on his pistol. The year was 1878, and in Ash Fork, Arizona Territory, practicing medicine without a license was illegal, even if you saved a man's life while doing it. "Miss Kane, I am going to have to ask you to stop what you are doing," Sheriff Dalton said, his voice carrying the weight of reluctant authority. The miner on the table before her had a piece of shrapnel lodged in his shoulder from a dynamite accident, and Olivia had just finished extracting it with steady hands and tools she had sterilized in boiling water. "This man will die if I stop treating him," Olivia replied without looking up, her dark hair falling forward as she worked to stitch the wound closed. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, each movement deliberate and sure. "You can arrest me after I finish saving his life." The sheriff sighed but did not move to stop her. He had seen too many men die in this harsh desert town from injuries that seemed treatable, from illnesses that lingered and festered because the nearest licensed physician was 3 days' ride away in Prescott. But the law was the law, and there were people in town who had complained about the young woman who had arrived 6 months ago and set herself up as a healer without proper credentials. Olivia had learned medicine from her father, a battlefield surgeon during the Civil War who had taught her everything he knew before consumption took him when she was 20 years old. She had tried to attend medical school back east, but no institution would accept a woman, no matter how much knowledge she possessed or how steady her hands were. So she had come west, where she thought the desperate need for medical care might outweigh prejudice against her gender. She had been wrong. The miner groaned as she finished the last stitch, and Olivia placed a clean bandage over the wound. "Change this twice a day," she instructed him quietly. "Keep it clean and dry. If you see any redness or feel heat radiating from the area, come back to me immediately." "Thank you, Miss Kane," the miner said, his weathered face pale but grateful. "You saved my life." "That is what I am supposed to do," she replied, helping him sit up slowly. She turned to face Sheriff Dalton, her chin raised despite the exhaustion evident in her green eyes. "I am ready now, Sheriff." Before Dalton could respond, a commotion outside drew their attention. A horse had thundered to a stop in the dusty street, and moments later, a cowboy burst through the door. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and hair the color of wheat. His blue eyes swept the room quickly, taking in the scene with sharp intelligence. "Sheriff, my brother has been thrown by his horse. His leg is badly broken and he is losing consciousness. The bone has torn through the skin," the cowboy said, his voice urgent but controlled. "I need help." Sheriff Dalton looked between Olivia and the newcomer, conflict written clearly across his features. The cowboy's gaze fell on Olivia, taking in her blood-stained apron and the medical instruments laid out on the table beside her. "You are a doctor?" he asked directly. "I am a healer," Olivia corrected. "I have extensive medical training, but I am not licensed to practice. Can you save my brother? I can try." The cowboy turned to Sheriff Dalton. "Then she is coming with me, and you can settle your legal matters after Emmett lives through this." "Now wait just a minute. Ethan Vance," the sheriff began, but Ethan was already moving toward Olivia, his expression leaving no room for argument. "My brother is bleeding in the street right now. Every second we stand here arguing is a second closer to his death. Are you really going to let a man die over paperwork?" Ethan's voice carried the kind of authority that came from someone used to making life and death decisions on the open range. Olivia was already gathering her supplies, shoving instruments into her leather medical bag and grabbing clean cloth for bandages. "Where is he?" "Outside." I did not want to move him more than necessary. They hurried into the harsh afternoon sunlight, and Olivia saw a young man lying in the dirt, his face contorted in pain. His leg was indeed badly broken, the white gleam of bone visible through torn flesh and fabric. A compound fracture was always dangerous, carrying high risk of infection even when properly treated. Olivia knelt beside him immediately, her hands already assessing the damage. "What is your name?" she asked the injured man gently. "Thomas," he gasped. "Thomas Vance." "Thomas, I am going to help you, but I need to set this bone, and it is going to hurt terribly." "Do you understand?" He nodded, teeth gritted against the pain. "Ethan, I need you to hold him still. Get someone to bring whiskey for the pain and to sterilize my tools again. And I need clean water, as much as can be boiled quickly." Ethan immediately began giving orders to the small crowd that had gathered, and people scattered to fulfill the requests. He positioned himself at his brother's shoulders, ready to keep him as still as possible during the procedure. Olivia worked with focused intensity, cleaning the wound first, then carefully realigning the bone. Thomas screamed despite the whiskey he had consumed, and Ethan held him firm, murmuring reassurances even as his own face went pale. When the bone was properly set, Olivia stitched the torn flesh with meticulous care, then fashioned a splint from wood and leather to immobilize the leg. "He needs to stay off this leg completely for at least 6 weeks, she said when she had finished, sitting back on her heels and wiping sweat from her forehead with her sleeve. "The risk of infection is significant. He will need to be monitored carefully." "Can you do that?" Ethan asked. "Monitor him, I mean." Olivia glanced at Sheriff Dalton, who had watched the entire procedure with a conflicted expression. "I suppose that depends on whether I am arrested." The sheriff removed his hat and ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling with competing obligations. "Miss Kane, you know I have to enforce the law. There have been complaints from Dr. Phillips in Prescott, who comes here once every 3 months and charges prices that working people cannot afford," Olivia said quietly. "I understand that he has the proper credentials and I do not. I understand that I am breaking the law, but I also understand that people are dying who do not have to die, and I have the knowledge and skill to help them." "The law is the law," Sheriff Dalton said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then change the law," Ethan said, standing to face the sheriff directly. "Or at least look the other way while people like my brother get the care they need. How many men have died in this town waiting for Dr. Phillips to make his quarterly visit? How many women have died in childbirth because there was no one with medical knowledge to help them?" A woman in the crowd spoke up. "She delivered my baby when he came early. Both of us would have died without her." Another voice joined in. "She treated my son's pneumonia. The fever broke because of her medicine." More people began speaking, sharing stories of how Olivia had helped them or their families. Sheriff Dalton held up his hands for silence. "I hear you all, and I am not saying Miss Kane has not done good work. But I have a duty to uphold the law, and if I ignore it for one person, where does that end?" He turned to Olivia. "I am going to send a telegram to the territorial governor explaining the situation. Until I hear back, you are confined to treating only existing patients and emergency cases. No taking on new patients for routine care. That is the best compromise I can offer." It was not ideal, but it was better than being thrown in jail. Olivia nodded her acceptance. "Now, let us get Thomas somewhere he can rest properly," Ethan said, his attention returning to his brother. Several men helped lift Thomas carefully, and they carried him to the boarding house where Olivia had her room. Over the next several days, Olivia tended to Thomas with dedicated care, checking his wound multiple times daily for signs of infection, changing bandages, and adjusting his splint as the swelling decreased. Ethan was there almost constantly, helping to care for his brother and watching Olivia work with undisguised admiration. "Where did you learn all this?" he asked one evening as Olivia carefully cleaned around the sutures. "My father was a surgeon. He served in the war and saw terrible things, injuries that would make this seem minor. He taught me everything he knew because he believed that healing was about skill and knowledge, not about what gender you were born with," she explained, her voice soft with memory. "He wanted me to attend medical school, but of course, they would not accept me. After he died, I had nothing keeping me in Boston, so I came west. You gave up everything to help people who are strangers to you. I gave up nothing of value. What use is knowledge if you do not apply it? What use is skill if you do not use it to help others?" She finished with the bandage and stood, washing her hands in the basin of clean water. "Your brother is doing well. The wound is healing cleanly and I see no signs of infection. He has been fortunate." "He has been fortunate that you were here," Ethan corrected. He stood as well, and in the small room they were suddenly very close. Olivia found herself noticing details she had been too busy to observe before. The small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the strength evident in his hands and shoulders from years of hard physical work. "You work on a ranch?" she asked, needing to say something to break the tension she felt building between them. "My own ranch, actually. Small operation, about 3,000 acres north of town. I raise cattle and horses and Thomas helps me run it. We have 6 men working for us full-time and we hire on extra hands during roundup and branding season." He paused, studying her face. "I have been thinking about something." "What is that?" "You need a proper place to practice medicine. That boarding house room is too small, and you cannot maintain proper sanitation sharing space with sleeping quarters. I have been thinking I could build you a clinic." Olivia stared at him in surprise. "You want to build me a clinic? Why would you do that?" "Because you saved my brother's life. Because this town needs you. Because what you are doing matters, whether the territorial government recognizes it or not." He spoke with quiet conviction. "I have some money saved and I have the labor. My ranch hands could help with the construction. There is a lot at the east end of town that has been sitting empty. I could buy it and put up a building, something proper with clean examination rooms and space for patients who need to stay overnight for observation." "Ethan, that would cost a considerable amount of money. You hardly know me. I know that you did not hesitate to help Thomas, even though you were about to be arrested. I know that you have dedicated your life to healing people, even though society tells you that you should not. I know that you are skilled and compassionate and exactly what this town needs." He took a step closer. "Let me do this. Let me help you the way you helped my brother." Olivia felt something shift in her chest, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the desert heat. "I do not know what to say. Say yes." She looked into his eyes and saw genuine belief there, a faith in her abilities that she had rarely encountered. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, if you truly want to do this, I would be grateful beyond words." Ethan smiled and it transformed his entire face. "Then I will start tomorrow." True to his word, Ethan began work on the clinic the very next day. He purchased the empty lot and had lumber shipped in from Flagstaff. His ranch hands worked alongside him, and soon other men from town volunteered their labor as well. Olivia found herself visiting the construction site whenever she had time between patients, watching the building take shape with a sense of wonder. She and Ethan spent increasing amounts of time together, their conversations ranging from medicine to ranching to their hopes and dreams. Olivia learned that Ethan was 26 years old. that he had come to Arizona Territory 5 years earlier with nothing but determination and a small inheritance from his grandfather, that he had built his ranch from nothing through hard work and smart decisions. In turn, she told him about growing up in Boston, about learning anatomy by studying her father's medical texts by candlelight, about the frustration of being turned away from every medical school she applied to despite having more knowledge than most of the men they accepted. "You are remarkable," Ethan said one evening as they sat on the porch of the boarding house, watching the sun set over the desert. "The obstacles you have overcome, the dedication you have shown to your calling, it is extraordinary." "I am simply doing what I was meant to do," Olivia replied, but she felt heat rising in her cheeks at his praise. "No, you are doing what others said you could not do, and doing it better than most people who have every advantage you were denied." He turned to look at her directly. "I believe in you, Olivia. I believe in what you are doing here, and I want to help however I can." The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within her. "Why does this matter so much to you?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment before answering. "My mother died when I was 12 years old. She had a fever that would not break, and we were too far from any doctor to get help in time. My father held her while she burned up from the inside, and there was nothing any of us could do. If someone like you had been there, someone with knowledge and skill and the courage to use it, she might have lived." His voice was rough with old grief. "I cannot bring her back, but I can make sure other people do not die for lack of care. Building you this clinic, it is the most meaningful thing I have done since coming to Arizona Territory." Olivia reached out and took his hand without thinking, squeezing it gently. "I am so sorry about your mother. And I promise you, I will do everything in my power to help every person who comes through that clinic door." Ethan looked down at their joined hands, then back up at her face. "I know you will." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then Thomas called out from inside the boarding house, needing assistance, and Olivia reluctantly pulled her hand away to attend to her patient. But something had changed between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that went beyond gratitude or professional respect. Olivia found herself thinking about Ethan at odd moments throughout the day, remembering the way he smiled, the sound of his laugh, the gentleness in his hands when he helped her tend to Thomas. 3 weeks after the construction began, Sheriff Dalton received a response from the territorial governor. He called Olivia to his office, and she went with her heart pounding, unsure what news awaited her. "The governor has reviewed your case," Dalton said, unfolding the telegram. "He says that while he cannot officially grant you a license to practice medicine, he recognizes the unique needs of remote communities and will not interfere with your work as long as you operate under certain conditions." "What conditions?" Olivia asked, hardly daring to hope. "You must keep detailed records of all treatments provided. You must consult with Dr. Phillips quarterly and submit to his review of your methods. You must not charge fees beyond what is necessary to cover the cost of supplies and medicines. And you must agree to immediately refer any patient to a licensed physician if one becomes available and the patient requests it." Relief flooded through Olivia so intensely she had to sit down. "I agree to all of those conditions. Gladly." "Then you are free to practice, with the governor's blessing if not his official license." Dalton actually smiled. "I am glad it worked out this way, Miss Kane. You have been good for this town." Olivia left the sheriff's office feeling lighter than she had in months. She went directly to the construction site, where Ethan was working alongside his men to raise the walls of what would be the examination room. "Ethan," she called out, and he looked up immediately, seeing something in her face that made him climb down from the framework and stride toward her. "What is it? What happened?" The governor has given permission for me to practice. There are conditions, but I can work without fear of arrest." The words tumbled out in a rush of happiness. Ethan let out a whoop of joy and, without thinking, swept her up in his arms and spun her around. Olivia laughed, clutching his shoulders for balance, and when he set her down they were standing very close, his hand still on her waist. "This is wonderful news," he said, his voice suddenly softer. "It is, and it is all because of you. If you had not stood up to the sheriff that day, if you had not believed in me enough to build this clinic, none of this would have happened." "You would have found a way," Ethan said with conviction. "You are too determined, too skilled, too necessary to be stopped." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "No one has ever had such faith in me. Then they were fools." Ethan raised one hand to gently cup her cheek. "Olivia, I need to tell you something. These past weeks, getting to know you, watching you work, seeing your dedication and compassion, I have developed feelings for you that go beyond friendship or professional respect." Her heart raced. "Ethan, you do not have to say anything right now. I just needed you to know. You are the most extraordinary woman I have ever met, and if you could ever see me as more than just the cowboy who built you a building, I would count myself the most fortunate man in the territory." Olivia realized she was crying, but they were tears of joy. "You are not just the cowboy who built me a building. You are the man who believed in me when others doubted. You are the man who has shown me more respect and support than anyone else in my life. You are the man I find myself thinking about when I should be focusing on my work." She laughed shakily. "Ethan, I have feelings for you too. I have tried to ignore them because I worried it would complicate things, but I cannot deny it any longer." The smile that broke across Ethan's face was radiant. "May I kiss you? Please do." He lowered his mouth to hers slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind, but Olivia had never been more certain of anything. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, then deepened as they both gave in to the feelings they had been holding back. When they finally broke apart, Olivia was breathless and smiling. "Well, it is about time," one of the ranch hands called out, and they realized they had an audience of grinning workers. Laughter rippled through the construction site, and Olivia felt herself blushing but did not step away from Ethan's embrace. "Get back to work, all of you," Ethan called out with good humor, but he kept his arm around Olivia's waist. The clinic was completed 6 weeks later. A sturdy adobe building with whitewashed walls, large windows to let in light, and a layout that Olivia had helped design for maximum efficiency. There was a waiting room, 2 examination rooms, a surgery equipped with the best medical instruments that could be ordered from back east, and several small rooms for patients who needed overnight care. The day they opened, there was a small celebration. The townspeople brought food and decorations, and even Dr. Phillips made the journey from Prescott to see the facility and meet Olivia officially. To her surprise, the older physician was supportive. "I am getting too old to make these long journeys as frequently as this region needs," Phillips told her honestly. "And I will admit, I was skeptical when I heard about you, but your treatment records are impeccable and your knowledge is sound. I would be honored to serve as your consulting physician and to help you in any way I can." It was more than Olivia had dared hope for. With Philip's endorsement, any remaining opposition to her practice evaporated. That evening, after the celebration had ended and the clinic was quiet, Ethan found Olivia standing in the main examination room, running her hand along the clean wooden examining table. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. "I am thinking that 6 months ago, I was working in a cramped boarding house room, facing arrest, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake coming here. Now I have a proper clinic, the governor's permission to practice, and the support of the community. She turned to face him. "And I have you." "It seems too good to be true." "It is true. You worked for this and you deserve every bit of it." Ethan crossed the room to stand before her. "Olivia, I know we have not been courting for very long, but I am certain of my feelings. I love you. I love your courage and your compassion, your intelligence and your dedication. I love the way you fight for what you believe in, the way you care for your patients, the way you look at the world. I want to spend my life supporting you and loving you if you will have me." Olivia felt her heart swell with emotion. "I love you too, Ethan. You have given me something I did not even know I needed, someone who believes in me completely, who supports my calling rather than trying to diminish it. You make me feel valued and respected and cherished." "Marry me," Ethan said, taking her hands in his. "Be my wife. Let me spend every day showing you how much I love and admire you." "Yes," Olivia said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." He kissed her then, a kiss full of promise and joy, and Olivia knew she had found not just a place to practice medicine, but a true home. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony at the church in Ash Fork, with Thomas serving as best man despite still walking with a slight limp from his injury. The entire town turned out for the celebration, grateful to both the healer who cared for them and the cowboy who had made her work possible. Olivia moved to the ranch with Ethan, and they settled into a rhythm of shared life. She would ride into town each morning to work at the clinic, treating patients with skill and compassion, while Ethan managed the ranch. In the evenings, they would sit together on the porch of the ranch house he had built with his own hands, talking about their days and making plans for the future. "I would like to train other women in basic medical care," Olivia told him one evening about 3 months after their wedding. "Not to replace doctors, but to give women in remote areas the knowledge to handle common ailments and emergencies until proper medical help can be reached." "That is a wonderful idea," Ethan said, pulling her closer against his side. "You could hold classes at the clinic. I am sure many women would be interested. Would you mind? It would take time away from my regular practice." "Olivia, your work is important. Whatever you need to do it effectively, whatever dreams you have for expanding it, I support you completely. That has not changed just because you are my wife." She kissed him gratefully. "I am so fortunate to have found you." "I am the fortunate one," he insisted, and the look in his eyes told her he meant it. Olivia did start teaching classes, and they were immediately popular. Women from Ash Fork and surrounding areas came to learn about hygiene, wound care, childhood illnesses, and safe birthing practices. She was careful to stress that she was teaching them to handle common situations, not to replace professional medical care, but the knowledge she shared undoubtedly saved lives. As the months passed, the clinic became an integral part of the community. Olivia delivered babies, set broken bones, treated fevers and infections, and even performed a few successful surgeries that Dr. Phillips praised as expertly done. Her reputation spread beyond Ash Fork, and people traveled from distant settlements to seek her care. Through it all, Ethan remained her steadfast supporter, her partner in every sense of the word. He never complained when she was called away in the middle of the night for an emergency, never suggested that her work should take second place to domestic duties, never showed anything but pride in her accomplishments. 1 year after their wedding, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. She told Ethan over dinner, watching his face carefully for his reaction. "A baby," he said, his expression moving from surprise to wonder to pure joy in the space of seconds. "We are going to have a baby. Yes, I am about 3 months along, I believe. I should have realized sooner, but I have been so busy at the clinic that I did not notice the signs." She laughed at herself. "Some doctor I am, not recognizing pregnancy in myself. Ethan came around the table and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. "This is the best news. How are you feeling? Is everything progressing normally? Do you need anything?" His concern was endearing. "I am perfectly healthy. The pregnancy is progressing well. I am a bit tired in the evenings, but that is normal. And yes, before you ask, I will reduce my hours at the clinic as I get further along." "I was not going to ask that," Ethan said, though his sheepish expression suggested he had been thinking it. "I trust you to know what you can handle, but I do want you to take care of yourself and our baby." "I will," she promised. "I have Dr. Phillips reviewing my care, and I am following all the same advice I give my pregnant patients." Their son was born in late spring, a healthy baby with his father's blue eyes and a surprisingly loud cry. They named him Samuel, after Olivia's father, and Ethan proved to be as devoted a father as he was a husband. He would walk the floor with Samuel when the baby was fussy, change diapers without complaint, and sit watching his son sleep with an expression of absolute wonder. Olivia took 2 months away from the clinic after Samuel's birth, but she had trained a young woman named Margaret to assist with basic care, and Dr. Phillips made extra trips to Ash Fork to handle more serious cases. When Olivia did return to work, it was on a reduced schedule that allowed her to spend mornings with her son. "I feel guilty sometimes," she admitted to Ethan one evening as they sat watching Samuel play with wooden blocks on a blanket. "Like I should choose between being a mother and being a doctor." "Why should you have to choose?" Ethan asked reasonably. "Men do not have to choose between being fathers and pursuing their vocations. Why should it be different for you? Society says it should be different." "Society said you should not practice medicine at all, and look how wrong that was. You are an excellent mother and an excellent doctor. Samuel is happy and healthy and loved, and your patients receive the best care available in the territory. You do not have to sacrifice one for the other." Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder, grateful once again for his understanding. "I love you. I love you too, both of you." He reached down to scoop up Samuel, who giggled and grabbed at his father's nose. As Samuel grew, the clinic thrived. Olivia's reputation continued to grow, and she became known throughout Arizona territory as one of the finest healers available. She published several papers on frontier medicine that were well received even in Eastern medical journals, and she began corresponding with other female physicians who were fighting for acceptance in their own communities. When Samuel was 3 years old, Olivia became pregnant again. This time, the baby was a girl who they named Charlotte, with dark hair like her mother and a calm temperament that was a blessing after Samuel's energetic infancy. Thomas, who had become like a brother to Olivia, doted on both children and was their favorite uncle. The ranch prospered as well. Ethan had expanded operations and now ran one of the most successful cattle operations in the region. He hired men fairly, paid them well, and earned a reputation as an honest rancher who kept his word. Together, he and Olivia became pillars of the Ash Fork community. One evening when Charlotte was about 6 months old and Samuel was playing with his toy horses nearby, Ethan and Olivia sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. "Do you ever regret it?" Ethan asked quietly. "Regret what?" "Giving up the possibility of being officially recognized as a physician. If you had stayed in Boston, kept fighting, maybe eventually they would have accepted you to medical school." Olivia considered the question seriously. "No," she said finally. "I do not regret it at all. In Boston, I would have spent years fighting for the chance to learn what I already knew, and even if I had succeeded, I would have faced prejudice and obstacles at every turn. Here, I am practicing medicine at the highest level I am capable of. I have helped hundreds of people, delivered dozens of babies, saved lives that would have been lost. I have trained other women to provide basic care in their communities. I have a husband who respects and supports me, and 2 beautiful children. She turned to look at him. This life with you is more than I ever dreamed possible. How could I regret that? Ethan pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. I am glad, because I cannot imagine my life without you in it, nor I without you. They sat in comfortable silence, watching as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Samuel came over and climbed into his father's lap, and Olivia held Charlotte against her shoulder, feeling the baby's warm weight, hearing her soft breathing. This, Olivia thought, was what happiness felt like. Not the absence of challenges or struggles, but the presence of love and purpose, and the knowledge that you were exactly where you were meant to be. The years passed in a rhythm of seasons and growth. The clinic expanded twice more, eventually employing 2 full-time assistants and a part-time pharmacist. Olivia continued her teaching programs and began advocating for better public health measures in the territory, including sanitation improvements and vaccination programs. Samuel grew into a thoughtful boy who loved books and learning, showing an early interest in medicine that delighted his mother. Charlotte was more adventurous, preferring to spend time at the ranch helping her father with the horses. Both children were healthy and happy, growing up with the understanding that their mother's work was important and valuable. When Samuel was 7 and Charlotte was 4, Olivia received a letter from the Territorial Medical Board. Her hands shook slightly as she opened it, remembering all the rejection letters she had received years before from medical schools back east. But this letter was different. The board had reviewed her work, consulted with Dr. Phillips and other physicians who had observed her practice, and examined her published papers. They were offering her an official medical license, the first ever granted to a woman in Arizona Territory. Olivia read the letter 3 times to make sure she understood it correctly, then rode to the ranch to find Ethan. He was working with one of his horses in the corral, and he smiled when he saw her approaching, though the smile faded to concern when he saw her expression. "What is wrong?" he asked immediately, climbing over the fence to reach her. "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right." She handed him the letter with trembling hands. "They are giving me a license, Ethan, an official medical license. I am going to be a recognized physician." Ethan read the letter, his expression transforming from concern to joy. "This is incredible. This is everything you worked for." "It is more than I worked for. It is validation that I never thought I would receive." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they were tears of happiness. "And it is all because you believed in me first. Because you built me that clinic and showed the community that my work had value. This license exists because you had faith in me when no one else did. No, Olivia. This license exists because you are brilliant and skilled and dedicated. I just helped clear the path a little." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I am so proud of you." They held each other there in the afternoon sun, and Olivia felt a sense of completion, as if a journey begun long ago had finally reached its destination. The official licensing ceremony was held in Prescott, with territorial officials and medical professionals in attendance. Olivia wore her best dress, and Ethan stood beside her in a new suit, looking uncomfortable in the formal clothing but refusing to miss such an important moment. Thomas watched the children, though Samuel had begged to attend and see his mother receive her honor. When Olivia was presented with her medical license, officially recognizing her as Dr. Olivia Kane Vance, the applause was genuine and warm. Dr. Phillips, now quite elderly but still sharp of mind, spoke about her skill and dedication, and several of her patients had written letters attesting to the lives she had saved. That evening, there was a celebration dinner, and Olivia found herself surrounded by people congratulating her. But the moment she treasured most came when she and Ethan finally returned to their hotel room, exhausted but happy. "Dr. Vance," Ethan said, testing out the title. "It suits you. It feels strange after all these years of being just Olivia Kane, the unlicensed healer. You were never just anything. You were always extraordinary." He took her hands and pulled her close. "I have loved watching you achieve this, but I need you to know that the license does not make you any more valuable or impressive to me. I was proud of you when you were working in that cramped boarding house room, and I am proud of you now. The title is nice, but it does not change who you are or how much you have accomplished." Olivia kissed him softly. "Thank you for that. And thank you for everything you have done to make this possible. I could not have built the life I have without you." "We built it together," Ethan corrected. "Your work, my support, our partnership. That is what made this possible." And he was right, Olivia realized. Their love had been built on mutual respect and support, on believing in each other's dreams and working together to achieve them. It was a partnership in the truest sense, and it had given them both more than either could have achieved alone. They returned to Ash Fork the next day, and life continued with its familiar rhythms. But now, when Olivia signed medical documents, she could use the title of doctor, and it opened new doors. She was invited to consult on difficult cases throughout the territory, to speak at medical conferences, to contribute to discussions about public health policy. Through all of it, Ethan remained her anchor and her biggest supporter. He managed the ranch and cared for the children when she had to travel, never once suggesting that her work was less important than his own. He celebrated her successes as if they were his own, and provided comfort during the inevitable frustrations and setbacks. When Samuel turned 10, he told his parents he wanted to be a doctor like his mother. Olivia felt pride swell in her chest, but she was careful to make sure he understood the commitment required. "Medicine is a calling," she told him seriously. "It means putting others' needs before your own convenience, studying constantly to keep your knowledge current, and dealing with loss when patients cannot be saved. It is rewarding beyond measure, but it is also demanding. You must be certain it is what you want." "I am certain," Samuel said with the conviction of youth. "I see how you help people, how you make them better. I want to do that too." Charlotte, listening to this conversation, announced that she wanted to be a rancher like their father. Ethan laughed and hugged her close, telling her she could be anything she wanted to be. As the children grew and the clinic thrived, Olivia sometimes thought back to that day when Sheriff Dalton had stood in her doorway, ready to arrest her for practicing medicine without permission. She thought about how Ethan had burst in, desperate to save his brother, and how that moment had changed the entire trajectory of her life. If Sheriff Dalton had arrested her that day, if Ethan had not stood up for her, if she had not taken the risk of treating Thomas, where would she be now? Certainly not living this life with a successful practice, a medical license, a loving husband, and 2 wonderful children. One evening, about 12 years after she and Ethan had first met, they took a walk together around the ranch property. The children were with Thomas, who had married a schoolteacher named Jane and had 2 children of his own. The sunset painted the landscape in shades of gold and amber, and the air was finally cooling after another hot day. "You remember the day we met?" Olivia asked, leaning against Ethan as they walked. "Of course. Thomas had been thrown by his horse, and I was terrified he was going to die. I burst into that room, saw you standing there with blood on your apron, and somehow knew you could save him. What made you so certain?" "You knew nothing about me." "I saw your hands," Ethan said. "They were steady despite everything happening around you, and I saw your eyes. There was knowledge there and confidence and compassion. In that moment, I trusted you completely, even though we were strangers. That trust changed my life, Olivia said softly. If you had not believed in me, if you had not built the clinic and stood up for me, I would never have achieved any of this. You would have found a way, Ethan insisted, as he always did. You are too determined to be stopped by obstacles. Perhaps, but I would not have been happy. The work is important, but what makes it meaningful is sharing it with you, building a life together, raising our children. She stopped walking and turned to face him. I love you, Ethan Vance. I have loved you from the moment you looked at me and saw not a woman pretending to be a doctor, but a healer trying to help people. Thank you for believing in me. I love you too, Olivia, and I will keep believing in you for the rest of our lives. He kissed her tenderly, and in that moment, with the desert sunset painting everything gold and the future stretching before them bright with possibility, Olivia felt completely and perfectly content. The clinic continued to grow and serve the community for decades. Samuel did become a doctor, attending medical school back east and returning to practice alongside his mother, eventually taking over her practice when she decided to reduce her hours. Charlotte married a rancher and took over management of the Vance Ranch when Ethan decided to step back from the day-to-day operations. Olivia and Ethan grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. They became grandparents multiple times over, delighting in watching their grandchildren grow. Olivia continued to practice medicine well into her 60s, finally retiring fully at 70 when her hands became too unsteady for detailed surgical work. But she never stopped teaching, never stopped advocating for better health care and for women's right to practice medicine. She mentored dozens of young women who wanted to enter the medical profession, helping them navigate the obstacles she had faced decades earlier. On their 40th wedding anniversary, Ethan arranged a celebration at the clinic, which had been renamed the Cain Vance Medical Center after both Olivia and Samuel. The building had been expanded and modernized, but the original examination room remained, preserved as Ethan had built it all those years ago. Friends and family gathered to celebrate, sharing stories and memories. Thomas, now white-haired but still vital, gave a toast about the day Olivia had saved his life and set all of their futures in motion. Samuel spoke about growing up watching his mother care for patients and learning what it truly meant to dedicate yourself to healing. Charlotte talked about the example her parents had set of what a marriage based on mutual respect and support could be. When it came time for Ethan to speak, he took Olivia's hand and faced the assembled crowd. 40 years ago, I met a woman who was working in impossible circumstances, facing arrest for the crime of using her skills to help people. I saw her courage, her knowledge, her unwavering commitment to healing, and I knew I wanted to spend my life supporting that work. I built her a clinic because I believed in her, and that was the best decision I ever made. Not just because of all the lives she has saved over the years, though that alone would make it worthwhile, but because believing in Olivia, supporting her dreams, being her partner in every sense, has given my life meaning and purpose beyond anything I could have achieved alone. She made me a better man, and loving her has been the greatest privilege of my life. Olivia was crying by the time he finished, and when he pulled her into his arms, she held him tightly. I love you, she whispered against his chest. Thank you for 40 years of believing in me. Thank you for 40 years of being worth believing in, he replied, and kissed her as their family and friends applauded. They lived another 20 years after that anniversary, both passing away peacefully within months of each other, their lives intertwined to the very end. The clinic they had built together continued to serve the community, now run by their grandson who had followed in Samuel's footsteps. And in the original examination room, preserved exactly as it had been built, a plaque was mounted on the wall. It read, Dr. Olivia Kane Vance, a healer who let nothing stop her from her calling, and Ethan Vance, the cowboy who believed in her when others doubted. Together they changed lives and proved that partnership, respect, and love can overcome any obstacle. Their story became legend in Ash Fork and throughout Arizona, inspiring generations of women to pursue their dreams despite obstacles, and teaching everyone who heard it that true love means believing in each other's potential and working together to build something greater than either could achieve alone. The small town of Ash Fork, Arizona Territory, had been forever changed by one woman's courage and one man's faith, by a love built on respect and support, by a partnership that proved what was possible when two people truly believed in each other. And though Olivia and Ethan were gone, their legacy lived on in every life saved at the clinic, in every woman who pursued medicine despite obstacles, in every partnership built on mutual respect and unwavering support. It was a love story for the ages, born in the harsh desert of the Wild West, built on courage and conviction, and lasting long beyond the lives of those who lived it. The cowboy had built his love a clinic, and together they had built a life that mattered, touching countless others and proving that believing in someone, truly believing in them, could change the world.